And we're going to be in Psalm 42. You got a Bible, you can go ahead and turn there. That's where we're going to be today, 42 and 43. I know you're thinking, what? It won't be that long, but we are going to be looking at those. These are some of the, you don't have to get ahead of myself now. I don't want you, jumping in there and reading it before we get to it. But these were some of the greatest Psalms when I was at some of my darkest times. God used to bring me out. And I find great hope in this, because if the king that was after God's own heart came to this place of despair and frustration, there's a little comfort that I find in knowing, however we like it, misery loves company. There's a little comfort in knowing that, okay, I'm not alone in this. In the course of my life, I know what it's like to have made like monumental, colossal failures. Some of those I've talked about, and some I won't. But they're there. And so for me, this series that we've been in really is some of the most powerful truth that we can have. I guess if there's anything that I can scream out to friends and family, believer or not, is that there's great shelter in hiding ourselves in God. Solomon says it like this: the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it and are safe. And so, man, when we're in trouble and that horn blares and we know the storm's coming or the enemy's approaching, what we better do is hike our skirts up and, Old Testament deal, hike that thing up and make it to that strong tower, because there's no greater place than right there. And so what we've been looking at over the course of the past few weeks are those issues. So we started out in Psalm 91, right? He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. And so what we find there is this general principle that God promises through that psalm His protection. He promises His army, so to speak, His heavenly host that helps us, and He promises one thing. He says that I will deliver you. Now, and He says this, and this is where I find hope. He says He will deliver me, not because I've been behaving and I've been a good boy and so here's your prize. He says, I will, because He loves me, I'm going to deliver Him. Now, I guess sometimes we can see that reluctantly, because I've done that with my own kids. I'm not really happy right now because they love me, I'm going to go fix them, right? I'm going to go help. And that's exactly how God is. Listen, think of what that means. It doesn't mean that we don't have to have our act together. We don't have to have all the junk in this, because this is what sometimes we feel like, oh, God, I need to do this, then maybe God will bless me. No, if I just love Him, He says, I promise I'm going to deliver him because He loves me. Man, that's good. You can't get any better than that. And then we looked at the fact of His sovereignty, right? And again, it's that. All things work together for good to those that love God and are called according to His purpose. Do you hear that common denominator there? He causes all things to work together, not for everybody out there. I don't mean the world. I'm talking about the world. But to those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. So again, He promises to take all this mess, these deficits, and turn them into assets. And I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. I liken it, and I don't know if people even needlepoint anymore today. But back in the day when there was that needlepoint thing going on, your grandma and grandpa, I've got grandpa probably, but grandma was doing that stuff. If you ever looked while they were doing it, and they've had that ring on that material, and they're throwing that thread in there, you look from the bottom side, it's a tangled mess, isn't it? I mean, you're like, what in the world are they doing? But if you were able to just stand up and look over the top, you'd go, I see what's happening. That is the picture of my life. I look at my life on this planet and I go, it's a tangled ball of mess. But occasionally God says, come up here and look at it from my side. And all of a sudden you can see that all that junk that looks like just a tangled mess, He's woven together and it's creating this beautiful tapestry. That's what He's doing in your life. These are the things that we looked at. We looked at the shelter of His mercy. And how, man, sometimes that's what we need. We created the storm, right? We ran there. That was David's trouble. He created the storm that caused him to lose sleep and all of those things. And so he cried out for mercy. And then we saw the shelter of His grace. that there are times when that's the overriding issue. We just need his grace. Paul says, man, there was this thorn in the flesh given to me, and it wasn't going to go away. And we talked about that thorn in the flesh doesn't have to be an issue. It could be a person, right? I mean, that's what angelos means, that, right? A messenger. So sometimes you have people in your life, and they're there, and you don't have the ability to walk away. You're just there. And Paul says, I cried out for God to remove this stuff. And God said, I'm not doing that. I want you to feel the pressure of that trial, of that storm. Because when you're weak and that's where you are, that's when I'm made strong. Grace brings about a perfection that nothing else will. So today, that's a pretty quick review, man. I'm kind of excited about that. Today, we're looking at this subject of hopelessness. Right? Now, I don't know if you've ever been there or not, where you just like, man, I got no hope. I am the eternal optimist. There are times, man, people will come in and they'll want to talk to us about their marriage and everything. And so Tam and I will meet with them, and they're just sitting on they won't even sit in the same, they one on one sofa, one on the other, and they're mad as hornets. And, because we'll talk afterwards, and Tammy says, man, until you started talking, I thought they just need, they're done. It's over, right? But I'm just foolish enough to think, and so we'll just start wading into it, and until you kind of begin to see a glimmer of hope there, and I'm optimistic that way. I always believe that there's a way of escape. Now I've been burned several times when I've tried to be that escape, but how many of you have been to that place where sometimes you're just hopeless, right? There's this discouragement. I have been there. I can count, again, I'm not going to bore you with my stories, but, man, in my younger days, I thought if you were discouraged or depressed, you just needed Jesus. Like you're just, it's your problem. You shouldn't be that way. Until all of a sudden you realize you have all these issues come, and then you realize there really is a thing called depression. Absolutely. And I'm ashamed of what I used to say because I sounded just self-righteous. And I'm grateful for the trouble that God brought me through. But sometimes you have doubt about things, don't you? You're discouraged. You're doubtful. You get disillusioned. You know what I mean? And you think, and there's a shade. It feels like somebody just pulled the shade down. And that bright light of just goodness and wholesomeness is kind of, you don't see it. You don't feel it. You can't experience it. And sometimes depression kicks in. And so I don't know if you've been there. It's not a fun place to be. But no. But that's what we're talking about. And I don't know if you've ever been in situations where your hope isn't really all there. I've had a couple. I'll just bore you with some stories real quick. But it was several years ago. Tammy and I, we were down at the beach. We were doing student ministry, and my good buddy Ricky, who I'd been to school with, came to town, and he had been a lifeguard all year. So we were just going to wade out to the sandbar on the beach, and out in the Gulf and hang out. And so we did that. Man, we swim out there, and I'm in good shape, man. So I'm out there. We're treading water. We're just talking, catching up, having a great time. Literally, it was probably about 30 minutes because in the salt water you can tread water a lot easier. So anyway, we decided we were heading back, and so we start swimming, and we're having a good time chatting. And I looked, and I thought, I'm getting no further now than I was 5 minutes ago. And there's a slight panic, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna. And I realize I'm getting further out. Now I realize I know you're supposed to understand the riptide and all that stuff. All that goes out the window when you think this is my last breath. And I remember I'm starting to panic. I'm swimming hard. And Ricky looks over and goes, hey, man, you better slow down or you won't make it. I said, I am not slowing down until these little toes touch some sand. This ain't, it ain't over. And so, we're just getting at it. And I remember it's the first time I'd ever had a thought of despair like that. Literally, now it's funny, but back then it wasn't. I thought, is this where it happens? Is this where you just go, I'm done? Is this where you tell your buddy, hey, it's been good, and you just gulp the water? I literally thought I was going to drown. But I wasn't quitting, and all of a sudden, you feel that sand. But I'm telling you, it's the happiest I've been. It's just like, and because there's that hope. All of a sudden you realize, I'm going to make it, right? And that happens in life. Again, I can get myself in stupid situations. I think I've shared with you. I've been on the side of a cliff, where I'm free climbing, and I'm up about 45 feet. That's like 3 stories up. And I realize I have gotten myself into a place, and I'm hanging on. And my buddy, I'm always with other guys, but Brent is looking at me like, "What are you doing, man?" I'm like, "I don't know. I have maneuvered myself to a position I can't go any further." And so for about 20 minutes, I think I hung on the side of that mountain thinking, do I just let go and jump off, or what happens, you know? Because go backwards was a jump downward to a little ledge like that wide. And I'm like, man, that. So I kept hanging on, praying, and anyway, finally I made that jump, and you hit that deal and you grab and you go, I'll be all right, right? There's hope. And so I want us to understand, look, life does that to us, doesn't it? We're just lumbering along, and all of a sudden we realize, man, I'm in a situation, and I don't have a lot of hope. And that's when, man, we need others, just like what Samuel's been saying. But here it seems like sometimes, because I'm not that guy that's going to tell you my troubles, but occasionally I'll like start, venting and telling you what's going on. Invariably, apparently I have the wrong kind of friends, because it's like Mr. Negative will show up, right? And you're trying to share your troubles, and all of a sudden this guy just wants to pile on. And now I'm feeling worse. I'm like, well, this was not, I shouldn't have done that, right? And they're just now griping too. And if Mr. Negative doesn't show up, and y'all may have some friends like this, Mr. One-Upper does. Oh, you think that's bad? Let me tell you my story, right? And all of a sudden I'm like, come on, bro. No, this is my pity party, right? I invited you. Have your own pity party. I'll show up, but this one's mine. Stop it, right? But it's just like it happens. Or the professor shows up and he goes, well, if you would have done this, you should have done that. Well, if you could have, right? And I'm like, no, I don't want to hear woulda, shoulda, coulda. I need a hug. I got the wrong crowd, right? And so I just think it's important for us to grab a hold of that. Because, listen, I know I'm trying to have a lot of fun today, but discouragement is real. To be discouraged is this isn't hard to understand, to lose courage. That's what it means. And so courage is the ability to see a sliver of hope and to act with anticipation that there is a way out, right? And we see that in all the movies. It looks like, man, the hero's he's toast. But yet there's that sliver, and he's just got that courage to do it. What happens is when we're discouraged, we don't see that. We find no way out, right? There's no strength to stand and to withstand the danger, hoping something better is going to come. What possesses a man to just decide to storm into the enemy as opposed to trying to hide? It's called courage. He believes that this is, as difficult as that is, it's the only way forward. And so this is the real deal. Spurgeon, who's one of my favorite old guys who write, used to say this, that discouragement is Satan's pry bar, opening up your heart to all kind of trouble, right? And I do think that. When you get discouraged, it's terrible. I've got a buddy right now, a close friend of mine, Jason. He has a friend who is in Colorado, and he has been like on some kind of suicide watch for about 2 months. I mean, they can't put you anywhere if you don't say it out loud. But the man is down to about 150 pounds, and he's a 6'2" guy. I mean, so we're talking about this is, and man, we've been praying for that guy, but there's no consoling that guy because discouragement has set in. Have you ever been with somebody who refuses to be encouraged? Yeah. That's where he is. And so if discouragement lingers, depression begins to kick in. And depression is an awareness of the gap between our ideal for ourselves and how far we fall short, right? That's what depression is. Just like a weather depression. It's when, right, the barometer drops and all that, and there's a depression. So I get depressed, or we get depressed when we have this standard and then something happens and we realize, man, I'm not even close to the reality of what I thought I was. Then we get depressed, right? What happens after you take a test, right? And you thought, man, I thought I was smart and I just flunked that sucker, right? All of a sudden depression kicked. I mean, that's what happens. And so depression can be described as like a Spurgeon, again, 1800s pastor over in London, Someone yelled fire in the middle of his message, and it was at a great tabernacle. Well, people died through the stampede and everything. Spurgeon never got over that, and he called it his great sadness. Right? It's just like you just kept blaming yourself. And so there's this despair because you can't fix it. And then Winston Churchill, used to call his a black dog. He said, I just had this black dog that would show up and nip at my heels constantly. So listen, I don't deal with that in the regular because I am that optimistic guy, but I do know what it feels like, and I've been there enough. And so sometimes a storm comes, and this is what we're talking about. Life throws at us, and we feel dejected, or we feel a sadness. We feel fear, right? I mean, man, who doesn't know what that feels like? Apathy. We just kind of get numb, and we just quit, right? And you just become apathetic. Or you grow weary. You're fatigued, man. I'm tired of the fight, right? I'm just tired of this. That was my friend Rick's wife. She was like, man, I'm not going through chemo anymore. This is the second round. We're done. You know, I'm just tired of this, right? And so this is what happens. Pessimism kicks in. The optimism is gone. It feels like your whole world is filled with Eeyores. Remember from Winnie the Pooh? You know, just Mr. Negative. You know, you have panic attacks. Some of you, those are real deals to some people. I've had friends that have gone through that. Isolation is what happens. You withdraw, and that's even worse because we're never intended to be that way. Emptiness kicks in, and hopelessness. Now, that's my long intro to a short message. In Psalm 42, this is where we're going to walk through, look at some points. Let me set this up, because when you read the first phrase, remember, it's a happy song we sing. As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you. Let me put this into perspective. David is crying out. He's written this song because his son Absalom, his oldest son, has defected and has turned on his father, sided with the enemy, and then even said, I'm going to sleep with all your wives in the presence of the whole world. And David, the mighty king who slew Goliath and was known as a giant killer, who was a man after God's own heart, found himself in this state of depression and hopelessness because his own flesh and blood has turned against him. All right, so I want you to feel that story, because he's going to write some truth here that we're going to really need. He says this: as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. What's he saying? God, I'm in need of some refreshment here. I need something. Has that ever been one of the cries that you've had in your life? Right? God, I need something. Right? You know, and let me I need refreshment. I'm parched. Because sometimes life will do that to us, won't it? Dries us out, man. I mean, we're just done. And he says this: my soul thirsts for God, for the living God. Where can I go and meet with God? Now, if you can't see the perspective there, what he's saying is, man, I'm in need of refreshment, but God ain't around. That's what he's saying. Not like, hey, where can I go? He's like, I'm looking. I want refreshment. I know my soul thirsts for God because he is that, but I can't find him. It's like he's left the building. Isn't this crazy when you start letting David and seeing his illustration of what's going on? I want you to feel his depression into this, because he's going to show a way out, and that's what I want us to see. But that's what's going on. He's like, man, where is God? And then he says this to make it worse: my tears have been my food day and night. What's he saying? I don't have any appetite. I have no desire to eat food. I'm that depressed. I don't eat that. All I can do, tears. That's all I got. That's all I got is tears. And then he says this: while people say to me all day long, where is your God? I mean, to make matters worse, everybody's piling on. Well, I thought you had a God, David. Where's he? Right? And all of a sudden, David's like, man, I'm with you. I don't know. Can you feel David beginning to shift a little bit and going, man, maybe they're right. Maybe I've been playing some game here. That's hard for some people to get to, and it's oftentimes hard for Christians to come to the place where we realize I have moments of doubt, right? But this is where he is. And listen, if you're in that place, it's okay. I'm just going to remind you, you ain't got nothing to worry about. All right? You got a lot to think about, but you ain't got nothing to worry about because the God of heaven still sits on the throne, whether you believe it or not. It doesn't matter what David believes here, right? It just matters what is. And that's why we're here today talking. And so then listen to what he's doing now, because this is where we go to. Why can't life be like it used to? Why can't it be this? Why can't I have that job that I love? Why can't I have that spouse that left me? Why can't, right? Listen to what he says. These things I remember as I pour out my soul, how I used to go to the house of God under the protection of the Mighty One with shouts of joy and praise among the festive throng. What's he saying? Man, I remember when life was good, man. I remember when we used to, I love going to church. I'm done. But I remember, man, it was I couldn't wait to get there and to enjoy all of that. So are you seeing what's going on? You see this deal? I want us to identify with that. And then I want us to, because that's the first piece of this. In verse 5, he begins to do what we call self-talk. And this is really good. This was some of the stuff that pulled me out of about 3 very distinct trials, 2 of which I put myself in, and walked me out. And you just begin to have self-talk. Because here's what some of us do, and I don't know how you do it, but sometimes my take is I'll just busy myself. Or I'll go work on other people's issues and just ignore mine, right? And we tend to find, some of you maybe just go shopping, right? I mean, what do you do when you get depressed, right? I'm going to go buy some stuff. I'm broke and I'm tired. I'm depressed. I'm going to go buy something, right? Others just escape. We run to whatever it is. Here's the thing. Until you get to the place where you start having an honest conversation with yourself and with God, this is the hope. That look, I'm not going to, as much as I love you guys, you're not my hope. I mean, I appreciate that, man, there are times you guys have helped me out of a lot of issues, just your words and all of that stuff. But there comes a point when we are, like David was, inconsolable. You could speak all the right words, but it's not hitting my heart because I have a wall. And until I begin to talk to myself, because self will always say some, not the natural man, but the new man will say some really good stuff. So here's where we go. He says this, why, my soul, are you downcast? Why are you so disturbed within me? That's a great question to ask. And when you're having your pity party and all that stuff's going on, you know what's a great question to ask? What is going on? What the heck am I thinking? Right? I mean, that's kind of to put it down. That's what we're saying. What's going on? Why is this raising my blood pressure? What is it? What is it that I'm afraid of? Right? This is powerful stuff. I'm trying not to share with you my own stories because y'all are tired of those. But man, I'm telling you, I have been to this place. He says, listen to what he says though. He's talking to himself. And what does he say? Self, put your hope in God, right? That's what he's saying. Sometimes we have to make a statement that says, no, I'm putting my hope in God. I don't care what my feeling is. I don't care what everybody else is saying to me. I'm going to make a conscious choice, whether I feel it or not. I'm going to do the right thing and to trust that my feelings will get in line. And so he says, I am going to put my hope in God, for I will yet praise him. Now, he said this all the way through this. Verse 6. My soul is downcast within me. Therefore, I will remember you from the land of Jordan, the heights of Hermon, from Mount Mizar. Deep calls to deep in the roars of your waterfalls. All your waves and breakers have swept over me. What's he saying? He's saying, listen, as my soul is downcast, I'm still going to remember. Even though I'm not experiencing that right now, I'm going to remember what it was like. And I'm going to let deep call to deep. I'm going to let what I felt like back then bubble up inside of me. So I'll remember that back then you delivered me then, and you will yet deliver me now. Right? That's what he's saying. Deep is calling to deep. My pain in the past is calling out saying, you were here before, son. and you're still standing, obviously God helped you. You hear what he's saying? He's not just misery upon misery. He's letting his past experiences. And we know he did that specifically with Goliath when Saul looks at him as a young kid and says, well, what makes you think you can go out there and take care of Goliath? Well, deep called to deep. I remembered I faced a bear and I faced a lion when I was tending the sheep, and I took care of them. This guy's no different. Right? And so this is what we have to do. We can talk ourselves off the cliff. It's great if we can have others, but my own experiences can talk myself off that cliff. Listen, I know what it's like to have the closest friend that you had on the planet decide that you were a heretic and was going to tell everybody that you have the plague and they should walk away from you. And I remember getting that phone call from a friend of mine and said, man, you better get back here. I'm sitting at a ball game with my dad and a couple of my sons. And my friend Cindy calls and says, man, this is what's going on. You need to get back here. Man, it sent me that's a fast depression. Because you're building this church and you're enjoying what's going on. All of a sudden, you realize you're about to lose it all. And I remember what that felt like. And no one is going to fix me at that moment. Nobody. But I remember I had one man that gave me perspective and hope. It was amazing. I've shared this story with you before, I know. But we were starting this thing called Mission Birmingham, and a bunch of pastors were gathering together. And literally one of the guys called me and said, hey, man, I'm not sure. It feels like the thing is heavy in the kind of wacko charismatic thing. Could some of you conservative guys show up, right? So I mean, I'm supposed to. I don't feel good at all about anything, but I'm perceived as just Mr. Anyway, I show up, but here's what I tell Lord. I said, Lord, I'm going. But the first person that asks me how I'm doing, I'm going to throw up on them. I'm going to tell them everything. And so I sat down in this seat, and the guy next to me, who owned a bunch of radio stations and airwaves, Christian stuff, says, hey, Saran, good to meet you. How you doing? Oh, here it goes. And I told him everything that was happening. This is in real time, right? And he looked at me and he said, Randy, I'm not a pastor. He said, I do know one thing, though. As pastors, that means you have certain sheep that you take care of. And he said, if God's the shepherd and you're the under shepherd, then he's entrusted with you a certain number of sheep. And those that are yours, they ain't going nowhere. And those that aren't, they can't stay. And the day you quit worrying about who comes and who goes, you're going to be all right. I'm telling you, I have had that conversation in my head. This is where I'm going to. Deep calls to deep. I saw God deliver me out of that. So anytime I start feeling that somewhere else, and you start thinking that, I'm like, you know what? I'm all right. I'm all right. And so deep calls to deep and lets me know it doesn't matter how many people you gather. It doesn't matter. Just be faithful. Right? Yeah, I'm telling you. Am I just preaching to me? But this is good. Now, he goes on. Listen, I don't want to. I want us to just hear what he says all the way through this. He gets to verse 8. By day the Lord directs his love. At night his song is with me, a prayer to the God of my life. I say to God my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why must I go mourning, oppressed by the enemy? Why, God, am I just still under this thing? He does this all the way through. He gets to verse 11. Why, my soul, are you downcast? Why so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God. If we go to chapter 43, same thing in verse 2. You are my God, my stronghold. Why have you rejected me? Why must I go mourning after my enemies? Verse 5, why, my soul, are you downcast? Put your hope in God, for yet I will praise him, my Savior and my God. What's he saying? My hope is in him. That's it. That's all I've got. And David knows if I buck up and live that principle, whether I feel it or not, I'm coming out of this hole. And so that is the message. I know I want to just drive it home in just a little bit of time. You can give me just a little bit of time? God's people oftentimes find themselves in hopeless situations. I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It was Gideon. Remember Gideon hiding out in a barn from the enemy and from everything else, and God shows up and says, Gideon, O mighty man of valor. Now this guy's hiding out. He's a weenie. He's just hiding out. And God says, let me call you how I see you. You're a mighty man of valor. He says, you're going to go out and you're going to fight that fight. Remember the battle? Well, okay, if you really mean that, Lord, I'm going to put this mat out there, and if it rains only on it, then I'm going. And it does. He goes, okay, let it rain everywhere but that, right? And finally he goes, okay, I'll go. And then so he goes and he gets a bunch of people, and God looks at him and goes, nah, it's too many. What? No, it's not too many. They number the sand of the seashore. I'm telling you, you got too many. Take him down to the water, see who drinks like a soldier and who doesn't. So he's left with 300. Gideon and his 300, right? And so God often, that's a hopeless 300 men against an army that numbers the sand of the seashore, who has more chariots than you have men. They have 3,000 chariots. You have 300 men. It's a lost cause. God turned the fight, didn't he? Same thing with Moses. I mean, Moses just saw God do 10 plagues and deliver his people. And he's following a pillar of fire by day and a cloud by night. And God directs him to a hopeless situation. God put him there. Where is he? At the brink of the Red Sea. So he's got the Red Sea in front of him. He's got the mountains to the west. He's got a few more to the east. And behind him is the mightiest army at the time known, chariots blazing. You can see the dust of them as they come through here. And God often puts us in those hopeless situations. Do you know what he told Moses when he was standing there? I love this. I can remember it because it's just clear to me, because it's what I feel like he says to me all the time. The first thing is, shut up. Right? Because normally, you can go read it. I'm not making this stuff up. He says, he says, stay silent. I like shut up because it's my vernacular. But he says, shut up. Stand by. Right? Like, just, would you get out of the way? Like a fly. He's swatting me out of the way. I got this. Right? Shut up. Stand by. See salvation. Right? Who's the hope there? It wasn't that Pharaoh would go, hey, just play and we just want to come out to, send you off better than we did last time, right? It wasn't like, hey, we'll just blast a hole through the mountains. Or we'll just swim. No, he's stuck. There's nothing. And God says, because I'm your only hope. I'm just telling you, God oftentimes puts us there. God's going to allow suffering and pain and unexpected crisis in order to detach our hope from anything else other than him, right? That's our problem. If I'm holding on to anything else, God's going to go, watch what happens when you hold on to that, right? And he's going to do that. Why? Because he wants me to trade that false hope for the only hope that there is, God himself, right? Amen. And so, I'm giving you some help here. There's a big difference. Don't miss this. There's a big difference in hoping for something and hoping in someone, right? I'm not hoping for anything. My hope is in God. We're going to sing a song, man. God, it's so good. Now, I'm almost done, I think. Most of our storms are designed to get us to jump off the sinking ship of our false hope to the stable ground of true hope, right? That's it. At some point, this ship's going down. And so you're either going to jump early or you're going to jump at the last minute. But God's going to make sure that you land on the terra firma of his own sovereign plan. So God's not doing something. This is what happens. Don't you think this sometimes? God's doing something to me. He's not doing something to you. He's doing something for you. This is everything we're pulling out of this psalm right here. Most great people of faith have gone through a hopeless situation only to come out the other side greater than before. Hope doesn't ignore the reality. It just adds God to the equation. But God, right? I gave you the story of Moses. How about the story of Abraham and Sarah, right? Hey, you're going to be a follower of a great nation. I don't know if you've been paying attention, God, but I'm old, my wife's older. She's old. She's so old, all her eggs have been washed away. Put her under a microscope. There ain't nothing there. She ain't having babies. That's the dream. And so what does Abraham do? Well, maybe I need to help God. Right? So he listens to his wife and has Hagar. That didn't work out so well. But at some point, God does what God does. Because he's our only hope. It's not in me. It's not in my ability to fabricate and make a promise. It's God to do that. puts all his people in difficult situations. How about this? Joshua's just now in charge. Man, Joshua, be strong and courageous. We're going to go take Jericho. Yes. Get our army together. Where are the weapons? We're going to use jars. I don't think I heard you, guy. For a minute, I thought you said jars. Yeah, we're going to yell. Wait. This is a big fortress. You seen the city, God? We're just going to jars and yell? Yeah, you can go walk around at 7. Right? Isn't that crazy? You know why? Some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. Listen, don't be trusting in your doctor, your Medicaid. I'm not saying they're not good people. I'm just saying our hope is in God. That's all we got. And so what happens when they march around that thing? All the walls fell. It's crazy. Crazy. How about the time Joshua's chasing people? And he's realized, man, I'm burning daylight. And if I had just a little bit of hope, I could crush my enemy. But he knows if it gets dark, it's over. And he cries out to God, and God goes, okay, I'll stop the sun for you. Right? There's nothing that God can't do to get you out of a situation that you feel is hopeless. There's just not. There's no such thing as a hopeless situation for those of us who are in Christ. It's just not. That's why the 3 Hebrew children could say, listen, we ain't bowing down. Blow the horn as much as you want. I'm not bowing down. God is able to deliver. Oh, and if he chooses not to, I'm okay with that too. I'm still not bowing down, right? I mean, you just can't beat someone who understands this. We could go on and on. But back to David. He determined to praise God. Say, in him will I trust. And that's the message, man. You're never in a hopeless situation. You and me always have God as our hope, even when it looks hopeless. And I just proved to you through the scriptures what he can do. Man, that's good. I got a really, really good song we'll close out with.